The slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy when incorrectly used, but there are slippery slopes. This is one of them.
Yeah, I don't. You keep talking about slippery phalluses, and I'm not. What does that mean?
Welcome back to the next episode of the Do Less podcast. Today, Jeff and John want to talk about their favorite, one and only Janet Yellen and some of her most recent proposals. Which one of you wants to kick us off with a little intro of what's been going on the past few weeks?
Yeah, I wish her proposals were to me because I'm in love with her.
Very fair point. She is beauty, she is grace. All right, John, why don't you tell us what's been recently proposed and where you think it's going to go?
Yeah, so she, came out. They're talking about the Build Back Better bill, or whatever it's called, 3.5 trillion of spending. Mm-hmm. She proposed this idea of taxing unrealized capital gains in order to fund it partially. And yeah, she's an economic powerhouse, so she knows what she's talking about, and she's got the country's best interests in mind. So I for one give her a lot of credit for being so bold and brave.
You're exuding with sarcasm.
Nah, man, I'm serious. That's I'm always one to really respect the economists that get put in charge. They have a great deal of experience and knowledge and wisdom. So I'm just I'm glad we can witness such a brave act of just so brave. I just can't fully comprehend it. I think that's the thing. I don't think I fully comprehend the greatness I'm witnessing.
You're just happy to witness?
Yeah, it's like a Super Bowl every day with her.
I missed that because my headphones died, but I think we were talking about the was it the Build Back Collectively bill?
Build Back Better?
BBC.
I think it's Build Back Collectively. BBC bill.
Is it? Okay, yeah. And are you a supporter?
If I'm not, is it racist?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Well, Jeff, in a separate conversation, you were telling me you loved BBC, so I don't know what you would have a problem with this.
It's a great news network. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
That's what we were talking
about. Sorry, I sidetracked us. But what did she actually say in the meeting? I think you wrote down the whole quote, right, John? You wrote it in your diary.
Let's play a clip.
Well, you see, guys, this is what we really need, because this is going to be great for the country, because, well, they've had it too good for too long, and the amount of efficiency that can be added to this system.
She proposed that we tax unrealized capital gains.
What does that mean?
Well, and she also said, so what it means is if you hold assets, stocks, or real estate, and they go up in price, and you sell them, you've just realized a capital gain, and there's capital gains taxes that you pay. If they're unrealized capital gains, that means your asset that you purchased went up in price, so you bought a stock at $10, it went to $20. Before you even sell it, you're on the hook for a capital gain. On the quote unquote on the wealthiest individuals. So she's saying billionaires that have options, or that have the majority or the minority equity of their company that goes up in value would be on the hook for potentially millions of capital gains tax, because she was saying that's their income. Like Jeff Bezos, we've talked about on the podcast before. His income is like his salary is like $70K is what he gets paid from Amazon, but he owns whatever 51%, or is he majority shareholder? I don't even know, but he owns Amazon stock. That's his wealth. He owns the company. So she was saying if you can tax his unrealized capital gains, that means the amount that Amazon goes up would now trigger a capital gains tax for him, rather than waiting for him to sell out of his position. Because otherwise, taxing him on 70K, people get upset and they say, oh, they pay close to zero income tax based on their wealth. And it's like, yeah, because they don't have any income. It's capital gains. So she was proposing that don't wait till they sell. Tax them every year. Tax them millions and millions of dollars each year, based on the amount that their capital has appreciated.
Right. Which is obviously a very new idea.
I thought unrealized capital gains were just when you didn't realize you had capital gains.
Right.
So one question on how that would work. I don't know how detailed her proposal was, but what happens in a scenario where Jeff Bezos' Amazon stock goes up in value by 50% one year, he gets taxed on it, and then it goes down 50% the next year? Is there tax write-offs for unrealized capital losses?
So questions like that. Well, Jeff, do you want to take that one? Or
I don't think she had a very detailed proposal. Like, I think this is like one of those things where they're just like, you know, putting something out there just to test the water, feel the air, like see what people think.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure some people had like a positive reaction to it, but like anyone who owns anything other than US dollars had an extremely negative reaction, because even if you own a home, right? If your house appreciates by $100,000, you know, and then you owe whatever capital gains is on that, which is like 28% now or something like that. So that'd be like 28K you owe in taxes. And then if it just drops 100K the next year, then you didn't make any money. Like, you just now had to pay 28K just, but you didn't gain any wealth, any income or any, yeah, it was just volatility. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you add into that the fact that asset prices are being pressured up with all the, you know, money printing and low interest rates. Like your average asset holder is going to get killed by a proposal like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't super specific, but I just don't see how there's any way to implement anything like this that isn't a complete disaster. So it is just baffling, though, that, like, you know, Janet Yellen's the Treasury Secretary. So, you know, the authority on our finances, and to propose such a like preposterous way of, you know, paying for spending, it's just like, I don't even really know what to make. It's like, it's astounding, because it's just like, who the heck can afford to hold any kind of assets if you're gonna have to be paying insane taxes every year if they go up every year? Because you don't have any cash to pay those taxes until you sell.
Right.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, the point you're getting at there, which is like the obvious problem, is if your home value goes up at $100,000 one year, that's not cash in your pocket. That's like a potential value of a house you could sell. Obviously, again, she's applying this to like billionaires holding companies, so not everyone with a $250,000 house. But in any event, that's not cash in someone's pocket. So, charging taxes on money that's not in your pocket is a pretty difficult thing for anyone to stomach. But yeah, I think it's important to note that I think we all, the three of us anyway, see this as a very unlikely proposal to go through, to get passed, that is. Seems super unlikely, but really the problem that we're discussing here is how problematic it is for something like that to even be proposed, or how preposterous it is, to put it in your words, Jeff.
Yeah, and in fact, it's disqualifying, in my opinion. So, like, it's one thing, like, Jeff, you mentioned, it's like she's just putting it out there to see how people react and, like, kind of gauge, like, public perception of, like, a new measure, potentially. And it's like, I have a problem with that on its face, sure. But to say something so economically illiterate, or actually, more specifically, it's financially illiterate. Like, this is completely like someone who's never owned a stock before in their life. It's like, it's not enough to just say like, oh, that was weird she said that, but she was just testing the waters. It's like, somebody who says this should not be in a position, like, we should understand that this person should not be in a position of authority on matters such as this. Like, someone who's potentially imposing new taxes, or proposing the new imposition of taxes, who brings this up, it should be like, oh, it's clear you can't be in charge. Like, oh, thanks for telling us. Yeah, get out. It's like,
Thanks for identifying yourself.
yeah, it's like,
As
oh,
unqualified.
yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, please get out. You're fired. She works for us. I mean, the way the Constitution is written, like, it's government of the people, by the people. You know, it's like, sorry, it's not working out. It's like, we're your boss, and it needs to be a position. We need to put her in a point where there's no way she can ever be taken seriously again. Like, oh, you're the person who proposed capital gains tax on unrealized gains. Yeah, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. Like, you have no more bearing on what can be considered intellectual discourse in this realm, because you've just disqualified yourself.
Well, Dale, you brought up a good point that I also wanted to address, which is you mentioned, oh, this is only going to be on like billionaires or whatever income bracket, or and I think that's like a lot of people who would defend a tax such as this would say, it's only on this top whatever. But I think to address that specifically, it needs to be clear that, okay, those people are the largest asset holders. If you now increase the cost of holding assets to the largest group of asset holders, they're going to probably sell maybe not all their assets, but some assets which are no longer sort of make sense to hold, because just depending on how it shakes out, certain things aren't going to be as appealing, and that would cause a huge supply shock, huge selling pressure, and that would affect everyone, right? So if there's a giant sale on assets, that's going to affect any participants in the stock market, real estate, whatever else is getting sold. And then that's just one side of the coin that affects that. The other side is inflation creeps people into higher and higher tax brackets. So, for example, the most obvious example is the income tax. When it was first introduced, was introduced under the exact same premise, where it was only going to be on like the top 1% of income earners. And so, I mean, you can say now that most people pay it, or actually it's technically not even most, but about half of Americans pay it. You might say that's a good thing. That's fine. That's not the point here. The point is, it was intended to only be for the top 1%, and it didn't stay that way, because inflation creeps people into that higher income bracket, and there's a pressure to bring that bracket down because it generates more revenue for the government. So there's political pressure to do it. So I think like the point that it's only for these people and it's not, I don't think that's like a valid point if people do try to bring that up.
Because it's opening the door to
right,
just applying that to more and more people.
Yeah, people say that the slippery slope, which is essentially that argument, it's like, it's a fallacy. It's like, oh, like imposing this tax on the wealthiest will then eventually, open the door for them to be able to tax everyone else. And then someone might respond to that and say, oh, that's just a slippery slope fallacy, so that's not a logical argument. But it's like, no, that's the example, the income tax. Like, that was a slippery slope. once they passed the income tax on the wealthiest, they were able to then just expand it. Like every time, like, oh, like during wartime, they were like, oh, it's wartime, so obviously everyone needs to pay the income tax. And then the people were like, if you said at that time, it's like, well, this is a slippery slope. You're just going to tax us in peacetime, you know, on our income. Oh no, that's a slippery slope fallacy. You can't say that. It's like, well, what happened? You know, it's not a fallacy. Like there are the slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy when incorrectly used, but there are slippery slopes. This is one of them.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. You keep talking about slippery phalluses, and I'm not. What does that mean?
So, yeah. That's all you could hear. It's like, yep, yes. You can look. A lot of people have addressed this, and just there's so many examples of like why this is not feasible, or even if it was feasible, I'm sure it may be feasible by like some totalitarian government who just, you know, it's trying to make a point that they can do it, and then just the absolute ruin that would come from it. But another reason, like logistically, why I don't think it would work is because you need to be assessed. So right, you get your appraisal of your assets, and then you get levied a tax based on the appraisal, right? But that's the thing about assets, like especially stocks, like it's extremely liquid. So on one day you might have a gain, on the next it might be a loss, you know, for a lot of people. So any day that you've been assessed on your, you know, assessed on your appraisal, the tax based on the appraisal, right? You can file an amended return like the next week or the next day even. So it's like on the day, it's like everyone's taxes are due April 15th or whatever, and it's like if I submit my taxes in February and I have such and such capital gain, and then the next week I have less capital gain that I'm showing. Yeah, so everybody who has the ability to, everybody who's been appraised on their assets, the worth of their assets, can just wait a week as long as it's before the filing deadline, and resubmit amended return. And so what does that mean for the IRS? They have no way of processing amended returns from like millions of people every week. It's just like,
Right.
Or it just everybody waits until the last day, at which point the IRS loses their efficiency of being able to process returns on a more like spread out through the year basis, and it's just all the crunch time at once. You know, everyone has to submit at one time, and it's just like there's just logistically like it wouldn't work. Like
Yeah.
You can also apply for like extended time to submit.
yeah, right. Yeah.
And so everyone would just do that. And then
Yeah,
do
I need
whenever
an
it's
extension
not
because the company I own is submitting their earnings next week, and I think they're gonna not beat their earnings forecast, and so that my assets are gonna go down, and I want to pay those taxes, not these taxes.
Right. So it's a total logistical nightmare.
Yeah. It is kind of like, it just feels kind of like surreal to just have such like incompetence in like leadership. You know, it's just like, it's not even realistic, you know, like you just said, like there's nothing about this proposal that's realistic. Like if you want to increase taxes to pay for more, you know, safety nets or whatever, it's like that's a debate to be had. But like this idea for funding it belongs nowhere in the conversation. So it's just so surreal to me that like the people we have occupying you know, positions of authority just being so old and so incompetent. Like why are they all so old, and why can't we get someone in their prime who's like a serious person? It's so strange to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Like,
there's a lot of incentives against like smart, successful people taking those positions.
Yeah, that's true. But it's just like, I don't know, I can't imagine anyone I've ever worked for like coming up with this idea. You know what I mean? Like,
Agreed.
they would all be like, this is idiotic.
Well, the people that I could think of that would come up with it are just people that just hate rich people so much that they're blinded by their ability to
are anti-government. There's plenty of like democratic.
Wait, what do you mean
left-leaning
company?
people?
Versus
I'm just
like
saying
individuals?
people who run businesses. I'm saying I feel like
Yeah.
your average business owner would immediately identify how preposterous this is, but it's like
Right.
you could have left-leaning people or whatever running a business who would propose.
It kind of makes me think of like, obviously I wasn't really like, I don't think any of us were super politically conscious at the time, but like when like the war, like the war machine, like the generals and the I don't know, like Colin Powell and people like them were like, oh, we need to go invade because they have weapons of mass destruction, and people are like, okay, like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And then we did, and they didn't, and then everyone's just like, that doesn't make sense. And then they're just like, yeah, we really need to win this war. And then like I feel like people at that time were just like, no, like you're disqualified. And then they're just like, no, we just got to keep fighting this war. And it's just like what you were saying, Jeff, like this, it's like surreal in nature. It's like these like we're just told this and we're just like, no, I don't, like that's not true. And they're just like, yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's like, no, like what you're saying is like wrong. And then like, yeah, it's really tough. We got to win this war, though. Don't you agree? It's like,
Yeah, it's it seems like a lot of government has become like a retirement plan for people.
That's pretty sadly true. Yeah, I worry especially about people in those positions regulating things or trying to regulate things like cryptocurrencies and NFTs and like social media companies. Like there's plenty of examples of like those hearings with Facebook and Google and whatnot that are just like absurd questions getting asked. They're like so embarrassing, and like it's funny, but it's also like scary.
Right.
Like a lot of those comments.
it's so funny. Like if you just like distill down that conversation, it's not exactly what it was, but like if you can imagine the conversation being like, it's like, I want you to just leave me alone when I'm dealing with this like whatever I'm dealing with, Bitcoin or whatever, and then they're just like, no, explain it to me so I can tax you. So it's like, no, I'd rather just like not be involved. I'd rather you not be involved. It's like, yeah. So anyway, tell me how it works so that I can take it from you. It's like
They're like, excuse me, Mark, is there any chance the Facebook can bring down the internet?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those wires, they get crossed. It could be really bad, don't you agree? No, you're thinking about it all wrong. But if you could understand what I'm saying, like that would be really bad. So we're gonna have to take.
You're like, okay. Did you see the one? I don't know if it's a senator or congressman or something, grilling Zuckerberg, and he asked the question like, "What are you gonna do about Finstagrams?"
He's like, sir, I don't think you know what that is. So why are you asking about it?
This Finstagram must be stopped.
Yeah, what are you gonna do about Finstagrams? So that's like, usually 15-year-old girls that don't want their parents to see their Instagram account. I don't know what you want us to do about that. That's what you're worried about.
It's like they're like, I've got 8,000 troops on standby. Just tell me when to invade Finstagram. It is pretty crazy, like, just how out of touch I feel like just everyone in Congress is.
Right.
And then it's like, and then he's like, well, now we're going to introduce the metaverse. And Congress is like, very nice.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's not even Facebook anymore, right?
I think there's no way people stop calling it Facebook though, right?
Yeah.
I think what
Is this good? for my Shibu Inu. My entire net worth is now in Shibu Inu currency.
Are you not using that anymore? It's mine.
Do you think that URL's for sale?
Yeah, right.
We should go buy it.
Let's just buy Facebook and have it redirect to doless.com.
Yeah, right. DoLessPodcast.com.
Yes.
Oh, whoops.
Still plugged.
DoLess.com gets a
I
huge
just plugged
bump.
someone else's website.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced Mark Zuckerberg's a real human, though. You guys watch that press conference?
The unveiling one, or which
Yeah. Where he's like, we're meta now.
one? Yeah. I watched the clips
didn't-
about it myself. Thing. I saw the
Good.
barbecue sauce.
Any
in
highlights?
The shelf.
The highlight, it's bizarre. It's like, I feel like I'm just not living in reality anymore. It's like, if it just felt like something from like a sitcom. It literally felt like like an episode of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, like just like very poorly scripted, like bad animation, and like it's like they're like trying to be subtle, and it's so in your face of like exactly every point they're trying to say. They're like, how do we tell them that like you can like transact in the metaverse? And then they're like, oh, look at this artwork. Oh, it's fading away. Oh, I have to go tip the artist so that it can remain here longer. And it's just like, okay, so you can tip people for their art. It's like, got it.
Didn't Facebook release a cryptocurrency?
Yeah. They were gonna do that like basket of
How's
currencies.
that compared to the various dog coins?
Yeah.
We should make a dog coin ETF, like just all the different coins with dog memes associated with it.
It has to be dogs, yeah.
Yeah. I just like to think there was like someone like legit at Facebook who was like behind all of like their whatever, like their crypto development. And then like that was right around the time when like the dog coins started like taking off, and they were just like, I quit. Like I'm not gonna be in this space because I'm actually competent. And then Facebook was like, oh, okay, we're not doing it anymore. It's like our guy, he left. We're not developing anymore.
Yeah, I feel like people who are big on Bitcoin, like, have got to admit it doesn't look good on Bitcoin for like its performance to be like outperformed by like memes.
Well, that's
true.
it's the like the most poignant thing, because that's what every Bitcoiner would tell you. Oh, the best performing asset ever, like ever in the history of man. This is the, and then it's like, yeah, but now this little dog coin is, and they're just like,
Yeah.
that's not a good metric to use. It's like we were saying that, we were telling you that.
Well, what they should do is just, I mean, what a smart investor would do is just track, like Reddit comments across cryptos and see what's getting the most, like hot likes and comments, and just buy it. Seems foolproof.
Let's get some closing thoughts in on Janet Yellen.
Would you like to start us off?
If you're listening, I'm available.
That's
I'm
the
sure
Janet
she's-
Yellen.
Yeah, I'm sure she's
Yeah.
listening.
I don't care how dumb your ideas are. You're the girl for me.
Janet Yellen, you got that sweet government pension. That is never going to face capital gains tax. Yeah, my final thought would be, it is like we joke, but it is like damaging. Like that's, if anything, they're able to just say these things and just like walk it back, like, oh, never mind. We just wanted to see how you'd react, and it's just like there's
Yeah.
no recourse. Like, what is the recourse? It's like we have to hold them to what they said. Like this, they can't say that stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
it's kind of
I
like just what is the recourse, right? Like anymore, it's like you got, you know, basically two factions of like 70 million apiece who just hate each other, and it's like you try to get those two groups to be like, hey, listen, this person in this one position did something silly. Can we agree to get the next guy in to, you know, put someone more competent? It's like, no, they fucking hate each other. So
Yeah.
it's just like,
Right.
how are you gonna get, you know, incremental gains when it's like just no matter what, we got to make sure our guy is in or whatever. You know, like I don't. It just I feel like the polarization we have just allows for more incompetence because it becomes less important, I guess.
Yeah, and it's almost like if the opposing side is successful, it's like get her out, and it's like okay, fine, she's out, and then they bring in someone else, and then the new person's just like okay, so we're talking about unrealized capital gains, and then just like hits the ground running with it. And it's like they're worse.
Yeah. I think to your point, I think it's pretty absurd that like proposals like this could just get like thrown out without any, like they get thrown out for vetting, just like by like public opinion, even if they have like no chance of ever like getting approved or going through any process. But it does kind of nothing but tell you like the political leanings and thought processes of the politicians making these proposals. But
Yeah,
could be
and it's just like I don't know. It feels more like signaling than like anything else. Like
exactly, yeah.
which is just I don't know. That's no matter what team you're on, that's not what you want. You know, government to be doing. You want it to be serious.
Right.
But it's like it's very unserious.
In an era where the entire pretense has dropped on the fact that like oh we need billionaires' money to run the government. It's like you guys just spent the last year running a $4 trillion deficit. It's like what did you have to take it from the billionaires? No, you just printed it, you know? It's like this idea that we need to do this because it's going to help us function or be able to fund the government. It's like, well, we know that's not the case. Like that's a false pretense that we are all aware of now.
Yeah. If we need to take it from the billionaires, then we just need more billionaires.
Yeah. No, but it's like the funny thing is like I don't want to get too into like the MMT people, but the whole MMT thing is like you can just print it. You know, you can print the money to pay for things, and that, I mean they're not wrong. Like you can do it that way, and that's kind of the point, right? It's like ultimately government gets paid for one way or another, and then taxes are essentially just create incentives, right? So it's like, you know, how you take the money from people is going to change behavior one way or another, and so you know you can play games with that all you want, but at the end of the day, do we want to spend the money, and are we going to take the money or not? Like that's the question. So it's like to propose such a terrible way of paying for government is just like so bizarre to me, because it's like just say okay, we're going to raise income taxes, something we know that generally doesn't have super horrible incentives. Like I don't know, it's just weird. Or just print it, you know.
And they have the shield under the fact that it's like the idea of like taxing income is like you're taxing like work. Like if you want people to work less, well, how about charging them a penalty for every time they work and they get paid for their work? It's like that's what the income tax is. But there's no way to compare how much work would have gotten done without the income tax, because the income tax exists, and there's no parallel realities that we can study where there is no income tax exists, and be like, look, no income tax, look how much more work got done and how much more productive people were. It's like you impose this penalty on work, and it had an effect, and we have no idea what the effect was. So you can just go on operating as if it was like harmless, never really know how much harm it did cause. And the same thing goes for like if you tax wealth. It's like, well, now you're penalizing someone who gave society goods and services, and in return took like titles and ownerships and paper like dollars, as opposed to consuming or, you know, spending or like whatever. So it's like those people like we have no idea how much it will impact it, but like on its face, imposing a penalty on accumulating wealth is like, it's like I don't really understand how you could drive society into poverty faster than saying if you're wealthy, we're gonna take it from you. It's like it's like, wow, no one's wealthy.
No one. Yeah. Like, to me, I don't know. Like, the best way to pay for government is just like a negative income tax, and which essentially the way it works is, you know, if you make a certain amount of money below like what you would consider like universal basic amount, you get extra, right? So you get like a negative income, right? Income tax essentially. So if you like make very little, you get like, your taxes are essentially negative. And then you have essentially like a continuous, like a smooth slope upward across all incomes, right? And so that has no bad incentives, because you always have an incentive to earn more, right? And so the debate can be around, okay, how much money, you know, what should be like the slope and the intercept of that curve, right? Because, you know, and then you can basically get rid of everything else, right? Because
for those of you at home,
to me,
for those watching,
it's sort of like
what he's referring to is, instead of a graph that goes like this, like with income, the more income you get, the more money you receive. But there's like a point at which the slope tapers off. So it's like it's still increasing up to that minimum basic amount, and then it increases faster with the marginal. So, and I'll illustrate all that through post-processing. I'll draw the lines in space so that the viewers can see what I was...
Yeah, I don't know if that helped at all. But the point is, essentially, you have a guaranteed amount of income, right? Everyone likes to talk about UBI. And then you strictly will make more money no matter how... Like, if you earn more, you'll make more. There's no kinks in the curve. There's no nothing. So it's just, you know, there's no bad incentives in that system. And then the debate is, how much should we tax, right? That's the debate. But like, there really shouldn't be a debate about how we do it, because anytime you like, you know, we have all these programs where it's like, you know, public education, food stamps, yada, yada, yada. And we don't need to get super into a debate about this, but if you just think about it, right? You have a budget and you have a constraint on that budget. So like, you can only afford a certain number of things. If I get money for school, then I have more money in my budget for other things. If I didn't get money for school, now I have less money in my budget for other things. So it's all fungible, and it's kind of irrelevant. Like, if someone gave me money specifically for education or specifically for food, it's kind of irrelevant, because I can just interchange that with my budget for other things. All it does is sort of create like weird incentives. And so the point is, how much money do we want to redistribute? That's the conversation. And there's a best way to do that, and they should just do that. And it's just, I don't know. It's like there's all this terrible, terrible nonsense. Like, the tax code itself is like completely incomprehensible. That's why everyone has to buy TurboTax or whatever to like navigate it, because it's just too complicated. So there's just all these horrible incentives in the system that like we could just do away with if we just simplified the whole thing. But whatever. It's kind of...
I think I agree.